how to work with xAPI or the Experience API in Learning Locker. The vast majority of this point onwards is going to be handled by my colleague Andrew Hickey. Andrew, if you want to say hello and just give people a background as to who you are.
Thanks, Craig. I think most people here know me, but I've been a developer at HT2 Labs for just over 3 years now. I've been lead developer on Learning Locker for about 1.5 years.
Thank you, appreciate that, Andrew, and welcome Yogesh as well. Yogesh, it looks like you're joining us from a mobile device. If you want to go through your audio setup wizard, you're very welcome to do so. That's the meeting button, top left-hand corner of your screen. You can go through the audio setup with us. Otherwise, feel free, and Dan as well. Dan Azura has just joined us. Feel free to just join in via the chat panel. So let's have a quick reminder what it is that we're going to be covering today. The first thing that we're going to do is take a step right back from Learning Locker, and we're going to look at some terms and some phrases and some terminology that will be very useful to have a good understanding of. We're going to discuss the concepts of a store and an activity provider. Andrew is then going to take us inside Learning Locker, and we're going to have a close look at the source page in Learning Locker and get a better understanding about what information it can provide. What service does the source page provide to us? I will either take you to the online help centre, or I will give you a link at the end of this session to the online help centre where you can refresh yourself on what Andrew has spoken about. You can refresh yourself on a lot of areas of Learning Locker that you may not be yet familiar with, and you can also ask us questions via that. And towards the end, I'll be giving you the opportunity to download a version of this Learning Technology Manager's Guide to xAPI. And I'm also going to point you in the direction of a few articles that the team have written that might help to flesh out your understanding. So without further ado, then let's look at this concept of a store and an activity provider. And I'm going to ask Andrew and to kind of take the line right now. I'm going to shine the interrogation torch on Andrew. I'm going to ask him this question. We hear the word store mentioned a lot. I'm sure you're going to mention it a lot, Andrew. When it comes to a learning record store, what do we actually mean by that term?
All right, so xAPI statements are events. They tell that somebody did something at some point in time. And a learning record store, like Learning Locker, is a big bucket to hold all of those events. Now, inside Learning Locker, we have individual stores which you can use to split up that bucket into partitions, so events that may be related. So if we jump on to the next slide, should be activity providers. An activity provider is something that's generating these events. So typically that will be some sort of LMS. If you've used Curator, which we make as well, that generates xAPI statements. You can use the plugin for Moodle to generate them. Quite often we align one activity provider to one store in Learning Locker to tie those events together, make them easy to query.
So Andrew, you've talked about an activity provider there, and you mentioned Moodle and Curator, and there are other learning management systems and VLEs, virtual learning environments that could do that. Does it have to be something, does it have to be a platform as such? Does it have to be something that is overtly a technology type platform? Or can it be something perhaps a little bit more traditional, a little bit, dare I say, a little bit less, more dumbed down? Does it have to be this high-end sort of platform?
No. Traditionally, the xAPI is designed for learning data. So it deals with like completions, taking people's score and results on tests. But because it's just tracking somebody did something, you can put almost anything in it. So we've seen people using beacons in school libraries, generating events for when people enter or leave the library, or when they take a book out. There's no LMS involved there, it's just beacons. People have tracked activity in CSV files, which can be literally anything, and then we've created adapters for those CSVs to upload all of that into Learning Locker.
Thanks, Andrew. It's a bit of a loaded question, that, because I know one of the clients I've been working with, they have their mystery shopper scores given to them in a spreadsheet format, and they wanted to get that into Learning Locker. So there's a great example of some real world material, some real world KPIs that they wanted to get into the LRS, and that was just in a CSV format. So thank you for fleshing that out for us. Appreciate it. What I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm just going to get the screen changed ever so slightly. I'm going to ask Andrew if he'll share his screen with us and take us inside Learning Locker so that we can examine this source page that I spoke about earlier on. Over to you, Andrew.
Can you see this okay?
Yeah, I can see your source page in the James Lindbergh demo Learning Locker.
Okay, thanks. So I've set up a demo organization in Learning Locker so I don't mess up anyone else's visualizations, and put a bit of test data in. So a quick overview of the data that we're seeing here. It follows the story of a bunch of salespeople. They join an organization, they do some training, they make a lot of calls to unsuspecting customers, and eventually they generate a few leads. So we've got all of that tracked over the course of a couple of months. So what we see on the right-hand side is a stream of all of the statements in reverse chronological order. So we've got the most recent stuff at the top and oldest stuff at the bottom. If I want to see more, I've got a little load more button here. So I click that and get the next bunch. For the next bit, it's going to be important to understand exactly what is inside a statement. So if I click on the space at the top of any of these statements, it expands it, and I can see all of the detail. There's a lot to take in here, and it can be quite intimidating, but it's worth trying to understand what's in there, because it makes using the rest of Learning Locker a lot easier. So the bit that we're actually interested in, there's a lot of information on when the statement came in, where it's stored. The stuff we're actually interested in is under this statement key here. So you've got a question there, Craig.
No, Andrew, sorry, I'm just typing a message to the rest of the participants.
Okay, sure. So under the statement, we have all of the body of everything that's happened, all the way down to here. And that's summarized at the top. So this statement specifically relates to Juan Morales, and he's created a lead with the HealthNet organization. If we dig into the statement, we can see that under the actor key here, we have Juan Morales. Under the object, we have this lead that he's generated. And under the verb, we have created. There's a lot more information that goes into this particular verb than just that name. It's got its own unique identifier, which Learning Locker uses to say that this verb means that specific thing. So we've got the entire statement stream here. So we want to filter it down a little bit. We're only interested in what Juan has been doing. Click on him. And over on the left-hand side, this Who tab has gone orange. And the right-hand stream has been filtered to only show Juan's data. If we open up Who, we can see that Juan has been added to this box. We can add as many people as we like, and we'll see the statements from all of them. So let's have a look at James. Down here, we've started to see a few more things from James in the stream. Click on the cross, take James out, and we get back to just Juan. So this has all of the stuff that Juan has been doing. So let's filter it down to just the leads that he's created, because he's been fairly busy, and he's created this total amount of leads. If we were only interested in specifically leads with Tenneco, we can click on that. We can see that there's only one. It might be that other people have created leads with them, in which case we can take Juan out and see if anyone else was involved. Looks like they weren't. It was just one. That's the only lead that's been generated with that company. If we dig a bit deeper into creating a lead, So the actual object that we're looking at here is a leads object. But we have a bit of extra information in this statement. Inside the context of the statement, all of this blob here, we've got a bit of information about where the statement happened. What was going on, who were they talking to, who the instructor was there a parent course, were they inside some organization? And we can see that in the context, the organization is HealthNet. So we can add that to the query builder as well. So the query builder is following the same structure as the statement here. So inside context, context tells us where a statement happened. We open up where. We've got context activities. That's here. Grouping under that. That's here. Now, we didn't make this structure up. This comes from the xAPI specification. So we have to follow that. It's a fairly heavy document if you ever fancy reading it. Now, I'm specifically looking for HealthNet in here. So I'm going to type that in to filter my suggestions down. Now, LL has dug through all of the statements and it's found all of the possible values that you could have. They should appear as suggestions here. So I can click on HealthNet and Learning Locker will actually look for the ID of the organization. So now if I'm looking at the context specifically, I can see that a bunch of people made calls to HealthNet before Juan actually managed to create that lead. That's a pretty good story there. So these calling statements, they might come from one system, they might come from the phone system. The created statement might come from your lead tracking system, like Salesforce, for example. All makes sense so far? If there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I will go to the export view. You find that some customers or users attach other reporting interfaces to Learning Locker. Yes, definitely. So Learning Locker it provides you with the xAPI specification, really. It provides you with a standardized layer between all of your different platforms. So the idea is you get everything into xAPI, and then you can look at everything using the same language. And we give you a few tools to dig into the data, but it's never going to be as deep as some sort of dedicated BI tool, like Tableau or Yellowfin, something like that. So as a quick escape hatch, if you want to get all your data out, let's filter this down back to just created leads. We'll pop open the export panel. So the export panel allows us to download all of our statements in CSV format. Add a new export. And I get a bunch of fields given to me by default. So I get a little preview on the right-hand side of what my CSV is going to look like. I can see that some of this is not too user-friendly. So some of this is looking like the actual nested structure of the statement. This is called JSON, this nested format. So if I want to dig a bit further into the actor, which is who did the statement, I can see that their name is under the name key. So over on the left, I've got statement.actor here. I'm going to put .name to filter it down. And you can see that we've pulled out the name, and that's what we're going to get in our CSV. For the verb, let's filter that down to display. Still not quite right, so I'll get NGB out of there. It is case sensitive, so you have to watch out for that. In some places, you're not going to be able to get the full structure just from the preview. So you can go down and have a look at the statement. You want to look at object. So object is down here. definition.type. It looks like the name is in name NGB. Oh, we've got suggested already here. There we go. Definition.name. Okay. Once we're done, we're happy with what we're exporting. Click download, and that will then mix this export with this query. So it's going to give us this layout with only the created statement. That's the query that we.
Hey Andrew, it's Craig here. Just FYI, there's a black block in the middle of your screen, and that's it. Whatever you've just moved was right in the middle of the screen, and we can't see through it. It just looks like a solid black square. So I thought I'd best let you know.
Connect widget. Is there now a black block in the right-hand corner?
Let's move to the right-hand corner now.
All right, so I've clicked download. Lock has built my download, and it's now available over here. So this is a snapshot of that download at this specific point in time. So I can come back here and re-download this file whenever I want, and it won't change with new statements that come in. If I want to include any new statements that have come in since I made this download, I'll just click download again. Download that, and I've got my CSV. Now, this is a pretty a trivial query I've built here. I'm just saying created, but say I did want to save it for another time. I can click Add New in the saved query box. Click Save, and then whenever I want, I can just pull that query back. So I'm going to use this Clear Query button here to get rid of the query, reset it to all of the statements. Click Created to highlight it, and click the Load Saved Query button. If I want to change this to be created and completed, I change the query here, I click Save, and that updates my saved query. A question from Corey: can downloads like that be saved or scheduled too? So this download, this export is saved under the name new one, so I can pull up any of the others that I've got here. You can't schedule them at the moment. That's possibly a feature that we could look into adding if there was enough interest in it. That's not something you can do at the moment. And aside from that, I think that pretty much wraps up the source page. Click on this little export button up here to collapse the pane when you're done with it. And that's everything.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to let Brian, Corey, Dan, Yogesh drop any questions that they've got into the chat panel, or indeed cue their microphone up if they want to open it and ask any questions. But whilst they're doing that, just wanted to sort of check in with you. We've not yet looked at, and I know this because we've got this in the future webinar, we've not yet looked at any of the fancy visualizations or the dashboards or anything like that. They're still to come in a future webinar. But it seems to me like what the source page is, and I'm putting this in a non-developers, non-programmers sort of language, it seems to be the entry point in your into Learning Locker from your activity providers. It's the doorway, as I see it, where all of your data flows into, and you can either look at that data in the way that you've shown us here, or you can start to make it look pretty in some visualizations that we're going to do in a future webinar. Does that seem to be a pretty accurate representation of what this source page is? It's the entry point for data into your store?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So everything in LL is some variation on what's happening in this source page. So the visualizations are just a different way of looking at the statements. Exports are just another way of looking at these statements. But these raw statements are what's actually happening.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Much appreciated. Once again, Brian, Corey, Dan, Yogesh, if you've got any questions, either open that microphone up, feel free to do that, or drop them into the chat panel. Thank you, Andrew, for screen sharing there. I'm going to change the screen out ever so slightly, and I'm going to ask everybody today, what we've gone through today has been very quick, it's been brief. Andrew and I wanted it to be that. We're very conscious that to massively deep dive into everything that you can do in Learning Locker in the first session may well do more harm than good. So we wanted this to be very light touch. We wanted to just explore some words and show you what the source page looks like. I've mentioned in the chat panel that this is being recorded. It might be an idea for those of you that have Learning Locker to compare this recording with your Learning Locker and almost to follow Andrew through with what he's been doing so that you can start to explore this source page. It would be great, Brian, Corey and Dan, if you could just drop into this whiteboard that's appeared on your screen here, what your key takeaway has been from today's session. What have you discovered? What have you found out? What have you remembered, or as Andrew prompted you about? Whatever it was or is, it'd be great if you could drop them into that chair, into that whiteboard there. Just click on the T symbol. I can see someone's already found their way there, and type into the whiteboard itself, and then click off and it will appear. Whilst you're doing that, I'm going to drag a few things onto the screen. I've just dragged on two little pods. One of them allows you to jump out of this Adobe Connect session and go and look at some of the articles that Andrew and others in the team have written, some blog posts. And the other pod allows you to download that xAPI Manager's Guide, Learning Technology Manager's Guide to xAPI if you want to download that as well. So we can see that someone's mentioned that it's very flexible. The example of library patrons being captured was interesting. Yes, the example that Andrew gave from GIS, one of the people that we're working from, that interaction, somebody withdrawing a physical book from a library could be captured. I'm glad you found that interesting. And that customizing the CSV output to minimize unneeded information in the fields. Yeah, that's a good point. I often advise people in Curator to export data in a CSV and get rid of what they don't need. And then they're, of course, left with what I hope is much clearer information. So Brian, Corey, Dan, it's just coming up to 14:30. If you want to ask any questions now, this is a good time for it. So Brian's asked, what is a beacon regarding the library example? A beacon generally would be a Bluetooth beacon would be a proximity beacon, and I'm suspecting that if that university had an app for the university for the students, then the beacon may well be able to detect who has walked into the library, who has left the library, what the football's been. Did Craig go into the library but not actually take a book out of the library? So a beacon could be configured to actually track your physical movements and possibly correlate that with you doing something such as taking a book out or researching something into the library. It could indeed, Brian. You know, beacons are being used more and more. I'm seeing them crop up more and more in marketing circles. There is a lady called Megan Torrance based out in the US with Torrance Learning. She's got a really good case study, and it won an award around how she has used beacons, xAPI, tablets for school children in a museum type environment. So it's a good case study to have a look at. So Corey, Andrew, there's definitely a question for you there from Corey. I'm so bow out of this particular question.
xAPI is actually really flexible around what you can store. So there's a few prescribed things that you have to put in every statement. So there's the actor, the verb, and the object. Aside from that, you can also put in your own metadata. So you can add what are called extensions in xAPI. So you define those for whatever your object is. So you'd have a specific ISBN extension, and then you just put that into the statement. From there, you could query on that particular ISBN.
Thank you, Andrew. Hopefully that solved, answered your question, Corey. So we are bang on for good. I'm pleased about that. Corey, I'll be honest with you, I didn't understand the question, let alone the answer. So I'm pleased that between you and Andrew, you were able to come to a clear understanding. Perfect. It's 14:30, guys. I want to respect your time. Thank you for coming along today. If you've got one or two last questions, you want to drop them in there. I've got nothing back to back, but Andrew may. But I guess if you've got one or two more questions, quickly want to drop them in, we could field those questions. Other than that, as and when you're ready to leave the session, if you click on the meeting button, top left, you will have an option appear to you to exit the session, and then you can be on your way. And once the last person's left, I'll stop the recording, edit it, and get it out to you within the next 24 hours. Brian, Corey, Dan, I'm sure you'd like to join me in saying thank you to Andrew in the chat panel for pretty much steering the entire session and giving us an insight into Learning Locker. I am going to drop into the chat panel a link to our catalogue page. So if you want to join another Learning Locker related webinar, you can find the registration details, the dates and times, and all of that stuff in our catalogue. Maybe I'll see you online again. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully see you in the next.
Cheers, Corey, Brian, Dan, and you have a good day as well, Dan. Thank you.